and in Uganda, I may say we have so many of them. Like last month, I had 15 autologous slings performed, and the results are good, especially with fascial lata and rexus fascial sling. So I wanted to know whether you have had, because these tapes sometimes a lot, as you clearly say, and also they are not readily accessible in the low and middle income countries. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis. I just wanted to find out the habitats of this patient, the weight basically. What characteristics, what can you comment about the weight and the general habitats of these patients?
Thank you very much for the good presentation. I'd like to know between the two parts of a treatment, you told us the Kegel's strategy, the physiotherapy is a part of a treatment, and also you present about surgery operations, but we would like to know what is the importance or what is the price of physiotherapy after, and how much time it must take. And also you told us that 70% had complications after operations. And I would like to know, there are some who those complications appears 9 years later. Would you mind to explain what can explain that period of 9 years later before you saw the complication later? And the third question is to show us the net difference between the trans-operator string and the topic string economically. How it is compared, and referring to the statistics or database in your study. Thank you.
Thank you, South Sudan. There is another person at the back. And the last one.
This is Michael Suddens from Harare. Francis, thank you for your talk, and thank you for the organizers for putting some urogynecology on the agenda. Francis, I agree with you that TBTO or obturated TBTs are probably easier to do and easier to teach. And I also moved to TBTOs because of fear of bladder injuries. But the concept now of doing up to 200 mils of hydrodissection just above the pubis pushes the bladder out the way, and there's less bladder injuries. My question to you is, what effect has the Scottish government's ban of TBTs and the English health authorities' absolute caution that you have to fill in about a 20-page document motivating to do a tape had on your practice? Because of this, I've probably been a bit shy of doing tapes since this furor in the press, and we have done, I think, about 20 or so Bulkamid periurethral bulking agents, which seem to be working well. But I welcome your what's happening in Bulawayo with regard to the adverse publicity in the press, especially in Scotland and England on the TBT.
Thank you. There's one more. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chora, for a wonderful presentation, very stimulating indeed. I happened to as well work with his mentor for these TVTs. He was my consultant as well when I was still a very junior intern. I'm just wondering, on a lighter note, the two whose TVTs eroded into the vagina, how soon had they gone back to sexual activity, or had they gone back to sexual activity at all? Because this brings into mind one of the anecdotal reports when one senior of mine had done a vaginal hysterectomy, and every week after the repair, the lady came back and there was a perforation and intestines were coming back. He remembers the story very well. Until they had to put wires. Yeah. And after the wires, She didn't come back. She only came back to remove the wires. There was no incident after that. Thank you very much.
Francis, you can take it on from there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. It's very clear I've opened up a Pandora's box with an avalanche of questions. Both were the comparison, going back to O rather to retropubic rather than O, the multi-center. I haven't actually cited it, but quite a number of smaller studies have been showing that TVTO is, in terms of success rate, they are more or less the same, but it's certainly, as Mike says from there, it's much easier to insert. There's no doubt about that. You are less likely to hit organs. Justice, I actually didn't say that it's not common in blacks. I actually said in my series, these were private patients. There was only one black patient. In fact, in terms of the patients that I see in the private, I think 90 to 95% of them are actually black. Then the remaining are Asian and Caucasian. So it's a very distorted figures that I have. I have not explored the use of autologous devices, but I think that sounds to me like a fairly reasonable way of doing it. When we were getting the TVT retropubic, in fact, it was costing, to buy it was about $800, but this one I showed the price there. The habitus of our patients, I didn't actually look at, in fact, I did look at that. None of these patients was actually obese. They were all within normal. We didn't do their BMI, but none of them was grossly obese, as far as I can remember. Physiotherapy before, yes, it can help. Physiotherapy after, we didn't offer these patients physiotherapy after because we didn't see that this was necessary because the closure of the leakage occurred there and then. The patient that developed complications 9 years, it's not that we noticed the complications 9 years later. She developed the complications 9 years later. That's when she came back and she started leaking urine. It was not that it was there and she was not observing it. The Scottish ban on TVT, I think it hasn't much affected my practice, so maybe because Scotland is very far away. The question about return to sexual is difficult. I didn't ask that, but considering that the one that had come from, in fact, it had been inserted by Mike Sardens. It was actually 5 years after when she came, and it had eroded. The other one that I had inserted myself, she presented 3 months after. I didn't ask whether she had gone to have sex earlier, but I thought it was probably the fact that the tape was eroding constantly on the skin, not so much sexual activity. I think I've had all the questions.
Thank you very much. Members, from the ECSACOG point of view, you realize that because of the high maternal mortalities we have over the continent,